Mhm. Well, friends, let's begin. Welcome to First Presbyterian Church of Wilmette's Racial Justice Summer Speaker Series. We're just delighted tonight to have Meleika Gardner with us, who is an activist in our community, such a thoughtful voice. She runs Evanston Live TV, which she may say a word about. But in particular, she has done some amazing work in the area of racial justice, especially very recently. That's having a direct impact and will have an impact long term right here in the state of Illinois. She helped co-draft and support a bill that was before the Illinois House and Senate that is now passed for K-12 education. And she'll explain a bit more about this, but it basically promotes a more inclusive view of history, a pre-slavery view of the African diaspora, the slave trade, and many more voices that we don't often hear from in our history classes. So that is a huge step forward, one step forward, but a huge step forward nevertheless. And she'll also have some helpful perspective to share with us about the landmark reparations bill that is passed in Evanston, and also the controversy and many different perspectives surrounding that. So, Meleika, we're just delighted to have you with us, and would just hand it over to you and invite you to share and present to us as long as you'd like. We do have a commitment to be done in an hour, so we will wrap up by 8:30. We'll have hopefully enough time, 10 to 15-ish minutes, for conversation, question and response time at the end. So as best as we can, let's give a hearty Zoom round of applause and welcome to, to Meleika Gardner. Thank you, Meleika.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, Mary. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you to the task force for having me. Gosh, it's so much to talk about that is going on in the country, in the world.
That's
Um, my little corner section of the world, I did what I could in terms of fighting systemic racism. Um, I joined an organization called We Will. I don't know if many of you have heard of We Will. It's founded by Alexandra Eidenberg. She's out of Wilmette. And it's a great organization because it's a group of women that help women and children get involved in legislation. So, how I came to meet the group, how I came to meet Alexandra, they were looking for video production for their annual fundraiser, and she had heard about me through the Evanston Chamber. So I met them, and I just thought that they had so much energy, and I loved what they were doing. I didn't know much about legislation, how all that process works, but I started hanging out with Alexandra, went to Springfield with her, and I was totally blown away, um, just with all of her efforts and her fire and her knowledge of how it all worked. So she had asked me to join the board because of the work I'd been doing in Evanston, providing a platform with Evanston Live TV for the people to have a voice. That's important to me. I grew up here in Evanston, but I moved away, lived in Atlanta, lived in LA. I was in LA for about 10 years. I came back and I noticed that we didn't have like a video platform for the people to really voice their concerns or to celebrate a new business opening. Um, so that's why I started Evanston Live TV, and that's how I came to meet Alexandra Eidenberg. So she had asked me if I would join the board because she loved the work that I was doing, and she felt like it would be a great addition to We Will. And at first, I was a little, I wasn't sure what I could bring to the table because I just felt like they were just such amazing women, just trying to really bring some change to policy in legislation. So, I just hung out for a while, and she said, "What would you want to change?" And I said, "Systemic racism, and I would like to start it in education because I felt like just my experience, and then watching my nieces and my nephews and talking to kids today, I've asked them questions about what they've been learning in history, if it's changed much from when I was in school. When I was in school, all they taught about Black history was that we started as slaves.
Mhm.
And there was nothing prior to that. And that was it. We maybe got 2 or 3 pages out of the entire history book. And then they would jump to, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and, that would be about it. Um, but because of the family that I grew up in, I knew that there was a lot more to our history. And I started out on the south side of Chicago, so it was predominantly Black grade school that I went to. So, we learned these things. But then when I moved to the north side in Rogers Park in elementary school, it was a melting pot. So all of my friends, it was a culture shock actually. All of my friends were from all parts of the world, Lebanon, Russia, Japan, Korea. So they became like my best friends. So I learned so much about them. And what I loved about their cultures was that after school, our general school, they had their own school to go to. So like my Hebrew friends, they had my Jewish friends had Hebrew school on, I believe it was Wednesdays. Um, all of them had a different school to go to, except for us. And it wasn't that many of us Black kids at my school when we moved to Rogers Park. And I loved that. And I could tell even at a young age that they had this confidence about themselves. They were so solid in who they were. And though I know it was mostly based on religion, but it taught so much about their culture and their identity. And I just saw such a difference. I saw such a difference. So when there were racist incidents in the school, I felt like they handled things differently because they were really solid in who they were, really confident in who they were. Um, I don't know. I just hung on to that, and I know that there were a lot of Black kids who did not receive, you know, uh, too much education about where we came from. Many of us still don't even know exactly where we came from or our history, so it's kind of lost. But I was fortunate to come from a family that, gave me that knowledge. So in growing up, you could just tell the difference in the Black kids who didn't have that sense of self-worth and value that other cultures grew up with. Um, because what you're being taught in school is that you came from slavery and that's it. You came from slavery and that's it. And the white kids in the class are the superior race. They're seen in the history books as the founders of America. They built America, and we didn't contribute anything. Um, and I think it plays a huge part in gun violence that we see in Chicago. It plays a huge part with police brutality because, if you're being taught that you're the superior race, then you see a Black man or woman on the street, you don't value her life because that's what was fed into you from age 5 and up. So I hope I'm is everyone following me?
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no,
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
great.
Amen. Mhm.
Okay. So when Alexandra had asked me, what do you want to tackle? What do you want to do with We Will? What can we do to help you? Systemic racism education has been in my heart for years, years. And I explained it to Alexandra, and she totally understood, where I was coming from and how I felt. And she said, okay, um, I hear you. She said, let's find out if there's a bill out there that uh, is already written about Black history, and let's read up on it, and let's just go from there. And I told her I really want it to be about pre-enslavement. I know that some schools still teach Black history, and I know they're trying to get rid of Black history, period, out of some of the schools in the state of Illinois. But I think it's important that our children and all children know the history of Black people, our contributions to this country, who we were prior to enslavement, that we built civilizations, we contribute to medicine and literature, architecture. We help build this world. So I said, I think that that is key. So, we went looking to see if there was any legislation out there already. And we came across Representative LaShawn K. Ford on the west side of Chicago. And he had a bill already called HB 4954. But that was to make sure that Black history stayed in the schools because they were trying to get rid of it. So I reached out to him. She said, well, I think you should reach out to him and ask him if you can amend his bill. I knew nothing about amending a bill. I knew nothing about any of that. She said, he'll know what you're talking about. I was like, okay. So I called. He responded right away. And I explained to him what I would like to do to his bill, amend it, and he was all for it. He said, I think that's a game changer. That's a great idea. So I said, okay. So, he invited us out to Springfield and we met. He said, I want you to write it in your own language, in your own words, and, send it through the process. So I learned a great deal about how all of that is done. And then we had a hearing and it came up really fast. And Alexandra said that doesn't normally happen. Usually takes a very long time before you get it before a House committee. But Representative Ford somehow made it happen. So on March 4th, we had a hearing before the House Committee for Education. And that's where, we ran into some opposition. There were some people who actually traveled to Springfield to oppose the bill. And I just thought, God, why would anyone do something like that? But they exist. They do exist out there. So he said, don't worry about it. Just get up there, speak from the heart. And, and we're going to get it past this stage and get it to the floor. So I said, okay. So got up there, we spoke. It was 14-7, 7 opposed. That was 6 Republicans and 1 Democrat that opposed the bill. And their argument was, well, if we do it for the Black community, then we're going to have to do it for everybody else.
Hooray.
So everybody was like, the room was packed. They were very bold about it. And of course, funding, as always, funding. Well, how are we going to fund this? All that, funding is always an issue when it comes to doing anything for the Black community. All of a sudden, we don't have the money. Representative Ford, I spoke. And it got very heated, very passionate in there. And then Representative Ford stepped in when they were insisting we'll have to do it for everyone else. So that was a reason not to do it. And he said, well, you're on record voting against something like this. And he said, why not? Why not include everyone that helped to build this country? Why not include the Native Americans? Why not include Latinx? Why not include the Jewish community? Why not include everyone that helped to build America? Why would you exclude them? So he said, if you don't vote for this bill, the next bill will be to make sure that everybody is included. So 7 of them still voted no. They didn't care. They voted no, but 14 voted yes. So it did pass the Education Committee and it moved to the floor. And then COVID hit. So that had slowed down the process, but Representative Ford said, let everyone deal with the virus right now, but we'll start to pick it up in a few months. So I did put a coalition together. We reached out to all the House reps, the senators. We reached out to everyone, and the team that we had put together was just amazing. They were on fire. And we were emailing, we were calling, we just didn't give up. And, getting as many yes sponsors, co-sponsors as we could get. And then it came up for veto session. Representative Ford decided to push it for the Black Caucus agenda to get the bill onto the Black Caucus agenda. But also we did go ahead and create that second bill, the HB 5851, which is the Inclusive American History Bill. So that included everyone that helped to build America. So he had at one time wanted them to suspend teaching history until they included everyone, because we felt that it was really against the law to misinform our youth, to continue to misinform our youth. He also said that in the hearing as well, to the ones who were voting against it. He said, so you're agreeing to continue to miseducate our children? And they were pretty much like, yeah, we're fine with it. Pretty much. So he was like that. Okay, so we drafted the Inclusive American History Bill, HB 5851. So he took both of those bills, the Black History Expansion, HB 4954, and HB 5851. We pushed to get it onto the Black Caucus agenda, and it got added. And so then Governor Pritzker signed off on the Black Caucus agenda. So the bills got through, and it was still with my language. It was the language that I used for both. So I was very happy about that. They didn't change any of it. So it all stayed, and it signed off on March 8th, 2021.
Great.
Yes, yes. So now we're in the process of, putting the commission together to make sure that that they actually start teaching the right curriculum to our children, K through 12, the right history, the correct history of everyone who helped to build this country, and who Black people were prior to enslavement. Because I think we're really the only ones who kind of lost history. And I think that's why we're considered devalued in this country, is because of the lost history.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that both of these bills will help to better race relations, because if we start the kids young at age 5 and up, so no matter what they're learning at home, they're being taught in school a different narrative, a different story. So gives them something else to process about people of color in this country. And speaking more of the truth of how this country was built, and, some of the injustice, I think, is watered down, and definitely trying to change it so it doesn't look so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
evil.
Right.
But it was terrorism. So the truth of that needs to be told. So I'm looking forward to it being added to the curriculum, and I know it's gonna start to change. It's gonna plant a new seed into the new generations to come, and I think it's that gift that's gonna just keep on giving, and we have to just make sure that these schools are actually teaching it. There was a task force that was put in place by ISB, but Ford and I knew what the results were going to be, so we didn't even see the point in them going around the state to see if anyone was teaching it. Like, good portion of them were not teaching Black history, not teaching pre-enslavement, and not teaching what everyone has contributed. So, we just felt like that was a waste. So we already know. Let's just start doing it now. But even the task force, they had said, so far, what we've learned is that, they're lying. They're just checking the boxes and saying, yeah, we're teaching it. And they knew that they were not. So I'm looking forward to the changes coming. And I just know that it's going to be better for the country. Well, for Illinois, hopefully other states will pick it up. But I'm hearing that more and more states are looking into changing their history curriculum. But I do think that that's just a start. That's just a piece. And in my argument at the hearing back in March of 2020, I did bring up reparations because at that time, it was just talk. Evanston reparations hadn't come about yet, really hadn't come about. And so I felt like this would be a part of reparations. So in education, giving us our history back is a form of repair, because that was a lot of damage done by lying and not teaching the right history. Years and years of damage. And yeah, years and years of damage. So I felt like, you know, if funding is an issue, then look at it as reparations. And so, you know, the room got quiet, like, that's a thought. But they didn't see it as reparations, but I see it as reparations. But that's how the legislation happened. And, you know, I thank Alexandra Eidenberg, We Will, for opening that door to a whole new world to me, because that's where the changes really happen. It's right there at the table with the decision makers. And some of those decision makers are a little scary. Oh, they're a little scary. So, and then that brings us to Evanston reparations, which is very controversial. I'm sure you all have heard about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am one who Alderman Robin Ruth Simmons, I have a great deal of respect for, and I thank her for making reparations a real conversation and opening the door for that conversation. But many of us, and I'm one of them, I do not agree that bank loans and home improvement grants is reparations. I don't think she should have called it reparations. And only 15 people out of the Black community in Evanston are going to benefit from it, which there's over 12,000 of us here. So,
but can't more people benefit down the road as there are a larger pool of money available for the reparations? Isn't it coming off the tax revenue from the marijuana sales in Evanston?
There's a big question mark on that. We've been asking for phase 2, tier 2 for over a year. I was attending the reparation meetings and there was no plan for anyone after number 15. There was no plan in place. And the marijuana sales, we're not allowed to know how much revenue is coming in. We were told we can't know that. So.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought it was up to $10 million, wasn't it? I mean, that's what I read, but obviously that may not be the truth. I don't know.
They don't have $10 million.
Oh, not now. No, not anywhere close, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll never know because we're not allowed to know what's in the fund.
Okay.
So that's suspect in itself.
And they charge a lot of taxes on marijuana in Evanston compared to other places. And so like one would think that it could have, who knows how many millions of dollars they've made on that, but I'm sure it is quite a bit of money
of revenue
coming into the city. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions and no one was really answering our questions. So if you attended the reparations meeting, you would ask your questions, you would offer suggestions, and they kind of, I don't know how you all run city council where you are, but here, you know, you have public comment and city council, they don't respond. You just speak your, whatever you got to say for 2 minutes, and then they don't respond. And that's how the reparations meetings were held. So you would ask your questions, speak how you felt about things, and you got no response, and they just adjourned the meeting. So.
Wow. Okay. Well,
that was it.
Wow.
So yeah, we feel like it's not repair. A lot of us feel that way. Some people feel like it's a great start. I personally don't think it's a great start. You know, someone has murdered your family, destroyed your home, blocked you from economic gain, and then they walk by and toss you a quarter and say, here's a great start. You know, that's how some of us see it.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I think we might have some questions for you, but I don't know if you were through with your comments about the bill that has passed and is hopefully going to change the teaching of history in our state.
Yes, yes, I hope. And I'm loving that I'm seeing more and more groups starting to get their bill out there to make sure that their history is taught. I was reaching out to people when we were writing the Inclusive American History Bill for everyone to draft their part, because I can't speak for other groups. You know,
Right, of course not. Yeah.
so I was reaching out and it was like no one was responding, you know, so we just, I couldn't put much detail into what needed to be taught, but I just put all the different groups that I could think of. But I'm glad that they're all doing their own separate, but I just felt like we could have all done it together, but it, you know, it didn't happen that way, but it would have been nice. But I'm glad to see others are doing, and they're getting them passed fast too, very fast. But yeah, that's it. That's it.
So is there a group that's working on revising the curriculum, and is it going to be, how will it be implemented in Illinois public schools from your understanding?
Ford is working on that commission right now, and the Black Caucus, now they're all involved in it. So
Okay.
I'll get updates on what's happening. I know COVID slowed a lot of things down, so
Yeah.
I think it's starting to build back up now. Everyone's getting back on it. Mm-hmm.
I'm
The
curious
House
about
hoping that this will be implemented, Meleika.
I am hoping. I think now everyone's going to make sure that it is mandated, that it is actually taking place. Whereas before, no one was really keeping an eye on it. No one was really watching. No one was reporting that it wasn't being taught properly. And now that other groups are coming forward, you have the LGBTQ community, you have everyone coming forward with their history. So I don't think any school in the state of Illinois is going to get away with excluding anybody anymore. Yeah.
So
Meleika.
how's the content being determined of what is going to be included?
I know that they were doing a survey to find out what materials they were using currently. And then based off of that, with the commission that they're putting together, they're going to determine, actually they're going to use people who build curriculums right here in the state of Illinois instead of going to Texas.
Oh,
other
good.
states to put
Good.
it.
I don't think we should go to Texas. I would vote against that.
Yeah, yeah. So they're going to use people right here in our own state.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do any other states have a Black History pre-enslavement program that we could use as a reference starting point?
There are a lot. There are a lot, but you have to sign up for those classes. It's not mandatory. So those will be a lot of the people coming to the table with their curriculum. And I learned that curriculum is big business. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
So you have a lot of people reaching out. It's like sales, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone,
yeah.
has a lot of great material out there. So it's going to be interesting to pick. And then with the other groups coming forward, their education bill, yeah, it's I think it's going to be pretty exciting what everyone picks and selects. And then I know different schools get their choice. They get to decide on which one they want, what they want to teach. Mm-hmm.
How soon will it be implemented? Is there a time frame on the bill that it says it has to be in place at a certain point?
We gave it 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, they just keep teaching the curriculum that I know at one point, I thought there was something in a bill that said they had to stop teaching the way they were teaching now and hold off and only teach like I don't know, civics or government or something in the interim until it got straightened out. But I don't know if that was part of the bill that passed.
That's what Ford put into HB 5851. I know that there was issue with that. And he
Okay,
was fighting
okay.
against that, but he felt like, why are we continuing to,
Mhm.
why we need to stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding, and just teach civic. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. But there was pushback on that for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm curious, like the pre-enslaved history, are you thinking that you'll focus on like African history or the role of African explorers, like people who participated in pre-founding of the United States sort of history, like the fact that a Black man was shot at the Boston Massacre, like that sort of history, or like even going back to Africa and talking about Mansa Musa and like the amazing stuff of Africa.
Yes, the civilizations.
Okay.
And you said yes. Before we were enslaved,
Uh-huh.
talk about how great our community was prior
Yeah.
to the enslavement, and then actually talk about the enslavement, what actually happened,
Yeah.
and then bring it to current day to Obama. That's the plan.
Mm.
That would drastically change the way history was taught to me. So I think that's a very important thing to be doing.
Yes, to me too.
Yeah.
To me too. I remember being a kid, and when we would get to the Black History portion of it, I just felt like all eyes were on me because I was often the only Black kid in the class, and it just was a horrible feeling.
Mm.
Well, that's another question, I guess. Like for me, I feel like so much of Black history that we're taught is so tragic, terrible, but like Black history is also a history of joy and like resistance and like, I mean, only recently did I realize that all of the like Camptown races and like all these songs that you learn as the part of the Great American Songbook are actually Black songs and like that we just they were taken and stolen and Americanized and mainstream, but like like there's so much happiness and joy that I think a lot of kids don't realize when they talk about American history. So I wonder if that is part of your efforts at all, and just an emphasis on just the amazing resistance.
We want to show our gifts, our strengths, our talents, just everything that we contribute. Yes, show the beauty of us, and not so much of a focus on the terrorism that took place.
Right.
We want to show that we were a strong people, and we still are.
Yeah.
Showing the contributions of today as well. And Ford is actually working with two young girls. They're 13 years old. Well, I think they're 14 now. The Pierce twins. It's called the Pierce Twins Bill. So these are two twins from Bolingbrook. And they were attending a Catholic school, and the school was forcing them to read these books that were very racist. And so they had complained about it, and the school did nothing, and the other students got upset at them because they complained about it. So they decided to write a bill that would force the schools to do research on all the, reading materials, that just tell stories, storybooks, to see, the origin of where they actually came from. So the one book that brought all of this to light was, I forgot the name of it now, but before it had the title that it has now, it was called 10 Little Niggers.
Oh.
Yeah. And they wouldn't remove the book.
Wow.
They wouldn't remove it. So they forced the kids to read it.
And this was like 2000.
Yes. Like last year.
That is
like last year.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another bill that's coming about. It, be great if you had them on. They are two fiery
Wow.
kids,
Mm.
determined, very determined. So they've written their first bill, and Ford is helping them get that going as well. And to, bring about books that tell great stories about, different people, different nationalities, um, not sad stories or stories that are just really derogatory and, you know, racist. But yeah, they did not want to remove the books. And I guess there were several books. It was a list of them. Hmm.
That's
But-
unbelievable.
but-
Too believable.
If I could offer a question, Meleika, thinking about our own perspective of faith, we read in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible about the importance of rehearsing your story, knowing in our own Christian language, the history of God's faithfulness and sort of who we were as a people, and both our ups and downs, both our successes and failures, to use our Christian language, our grace and our sin. But I was so struck and so moved with your testimony there about growing up in elementary school and just noticing your friends who were Jewish or your friends who were Indian, who had a deep sense of who they were, their own identity that was so intricately tied to their story, to who they were as a people. And I so appreciate your sharing that with us, because to me, it really resonates with how important it is, for our story of faith, but how much that is. You use the word reparations to talk about, the importance of education. We Presbyterians are big believers in education, both we haven't been a tradition that's promoted parochial schools. We've been a tradition that's promoted public schools on the whole. We don't have, Presbyterian parochial schools. So we really believe in education. We really believe in telling our stories. And I wonder if you could just reflect on, now as a young adult, how learning your story in its fullness and its beauty and its power has impacted your own identity now. I mean, I'm so moved with how your very language is in this bill, and I'm inspired now to go read every word and just be reminded of it. But could you reflect a little for us on how you've come from growing up in public school and not hearing your full story to today having a better sense of it, and how that motivates you to repair that harm that's being done?
Hmm. Well, I did have a family that spoke about our history, at the kitchen table, but still a lot I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Still a lot that I didn't know, like Tulsa,
Yeah.
the Tulsa massacre,
Right.
Juneteenth. I mean,
Right.
I just learned, to be honest, I just learned about Juneteenth like not too long ago.
Yeah.
So did we.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a lot of people. A lot of us didn't know about Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, actually, it's a white person that told me about Juneteenth. So, I didn't even know about it. There, it's the more I learn, the more, for a while, the more angry I got, but I turned that anger more into, we have to pour into the community. And I think education is a way to heal. So it has brought more confidence and self-esteem in me personally. Learning more about, just what my community has gone through. And yeah, it's really strengthened. It's really strengthened me. And now, I don't have children of my own. So this is my way of, mothering the masses, I guess, feeding into them. And I know that this is gold to all children, not just to the Black children, but to all children, because I think that it's valuable information that's going to help them in life to, see our similarities and respect our similarities and our differences. And I think it's going to build just a better country. So with that, I feel so hopeful about the future. I really, really do. I really do. And I'm hoping that it saves some lives. I know I've shared, I lost my nephew to gun violence just 3 years ago on the south side of Chicago. He was coming from work. He was, young in his 20s. And, I just feel like because some young Black men and women, boys, girls, still don't have that education about self and where they come from. So it does affect your self-worth and value. So if you don't value your own life, then when you see someone who looks like you have no value for their life either. So it's nothing for you to pick up a gun and to kill because you're angry and you're desperate and poverty, you're just desperate and you're angry. And so you kill that which you hate, which is self. And I truly believe that if this is taught in school, that it will save some lives. It will save some lives. And I lost my own father to gun violence. He was young. He was 29. I was 9. And that was, devastating. So, and I lost many friends and relatives to it. And that's a lot of pain growing up and still experiencing today. Even with COVID-19, with the Black community, disproportionately being affected. I just buried my uncle last week from COVID-19. He was only 57. Um, he was, from a small town, and it's, systemic racism. It's a beast. It's a monster.
Mhm.
It's a monster. So, this gives me hope, and really, I don't know what else to do. And so to me, We Will was like God sent.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've done something from my little corner of the world. That's a start. It's something, and maybe someone will build upon that and make it stronger. So Ford had the original bill. I built on it. Maybe someone else will build until we get it right in this country, all over.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meleika.
Yeah.
Amy Russell, it looked like you had your hand raised. Did you want to ask a question?
So I share in your hope from the work that you have done and the passing of this bill into law. I'm my hope. I am wondering, like from school to school, from town to town, the racial profile is different. The demographics are different, and I'm hoping that there is like a no opt out. That this law, a school can't choose to opt out of this inclusive history that accurately represents the Black community. So I'm that's my question too, is how in writing the bill, how did you address that?
I did speak with Ford about the opting out. I said, many parents will opt out for this. And he said, we're going to make it mandatory. They have to teach it. The kids
Okay.
have to learn it. They cannot pass without this in the curriculum. So there's no opting out of it.
That's so that's terrific to hear. I know some kids in the area who Nutria Township High School. A few years ago, they had school on Martin Luther King Day for a Black education, African American education day, and many parents kept their kids home. did not allow their kids to go. So that was what prompted my question, is that it's very real and very current, that people are very nearby. I'm glad there's no opt-out. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard for them to opt out, especially when you have the other groups making sure their curriculum is in there. So they're going to miss all of history if they're going to opt out. They're going to miss LGBTQ, they're going to miss Jewish, they're going to miss Latinx, they're going to miss, everything. Native American, they're going to miss everything. They're just going to fail history.
Meleika, I have a question. Excuse me. I have a question for you about the Evanston reparation. I thought you mentioned the number 15. Is that correct? Of people who are eligible to get the reparations. Is that a correct number? I was curious as to how they came up with such a small number. Originally, I read that this was going to relate to discrimination in housing over a period of many years. And I can't in my wildest imagination believe that an analysis of that would come up with only 15 people. Do you have any knowledge as to why it's only 15? And maybe my initial understanding of it relating to housing discrimination is wrong.
Bob, we asked that question. How did you come up with these numbers? And we have not gotten an answer. We were told
you don't even know.
We don't know. We weren't given. We asked them. They said, well, the first 400,000 has to be split up. So at first it was they were going to give them 10,000. Then they said, oh no, well, that's too low. Let's give them 25,000. So that would break down the 400,000. So then we were like, well, why 400,000? Why 10 million? We don't know where these numbers came from. They just pulled them out the sky. We cannot get an answer. We've asked 1 million times. Where did you get 10 million from? Why 400,000? Why 15 families? And how are you deciding on the 15 families? So are these friends of the aldermen and the stakeholders? You're hooking your friends up? Like what's going on here? And we haven't even heard anything else about it.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Considering the amount of publicity the city has gotten for it, it's particularly galling that this is the situation, I would say. Because everyone in the whole world has been covering this story. And so I'm sorry that they've taken advantage.
Yes.
There certainly seems to be a need for a follow-up story with the press pointing out that, yes, it sounded great. And here's what we've gotten out of it: 15 people or 15 families, and that's it. I mean, I would think that would be very shocking to people out there, and suddenly Evanston wouldn't be getting a lot of brownie points for what they're doing.
Well, there was a group that formed that, hit the press. I did put a press conference together as well, so that there was another narrative out there about what's actually taking place, because Evanston is really putting out this story like all the Black people in Evanston are getting money.
Right.
And that is not the case. One, you have to get qualified by a bank. So you don't even get to hold the check. You never get the check. The check goes straight to the bank. And then you have to qualify for it. So they based this on redlining.
Right.
The banks caused the redlining. So you're forcing even this 15 to go to the institutions that discriminate against them in the first place. And now they have to go through the process all over again and possibly be denied for reparations. So, and so many people spoke up. Oh, so many people spoke up, spoke to the press. But that machine was on fire. Like it was in motion before people really woke up and saw what was actually taking place. So the PR machine was huge. So while we were attending the reparations meetings and telling them, no, you can't do this. This isn't reparations. Don't do it. They already had a PR plan in place. So
that worked very effectively and
And it
informed the
worked,
whole country about this land-breaking
Yes.
step that Evanston had taken, which is a very interesting perspective that you're offering now. Yeah.
yes. And March 22nd, they voted to pass it. There were 2 aldermen that did speak against it.
Hmm.
And Alderman Suffredin, Tom Suffredin, he was actually the first to vote no because he said there's no plan. So then everyone was calling him a racist because he voted no against reparations, but no one was listening to his reasoning. His reasoning was there's no plan in place, and there's no plan, so it's going to piss a lot of people off because one, the money isn't there. So you're promising money that's not even there. And Alderman Cicely Fleming was like, you know, you all are painting the smoke and mirrors and to the country, and we're going to have to answer to that eventually. So yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess. So only 2 aldermen out of the 9 really spoke to what was actually taking place.
Well, I agree with you, Meleika. Is, you know, giving it to the banks to administer seems totally counterproductive. What bank is going to raise its hand and said, yeah, we did a lot of illegal redlining. We did a lot of bad things. So we acknowledge that and now we'll help you. I mean, they're not going to do that. They're going to point the finger at other banks or other people and not accept any blank. That's why I think you need some kind of independent board to administer this that can really investigate which banks were doing the redlining and how they were doing it, and then make a determination on who qualifies.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And $25,000 is not much of a down payment in Evanston.
Right.
So I don't know what property they're going to buy in Evanston. It's very expensive here to buy properties. So that alone.
Couldn't it also be used for renovation and what there's some other possible ways that the 25,000 could be applied?
Home improvement up to
Okay.
25, so that you don't get the full 25. So it's up to
Okay.
25 for the home improvement,
Okay.
and to assist with mortgage payments.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I don't know how they're going to determine how much of the 25 this person gets, and you know, and then the families, you have to have been here from 1919 to 1969.
Continuously?
Yes, you still have to be here, or the descendant of someone who lived here 1919
right.
to 1969. And then everyone was trying to figure out, well, where'd you come up with those dates? Like racism didn't end in 1969.
Right.
So,
Wow.
you know, that's also, and then you have to prove it. You have to prove
Oh,
there was
yeah.
discrimination, and like, who has that kind of documentation laying around that you were redlined between 1919 and 1969? So who has that kind of proof? So of the 15, you know, still hoping that they can even prove it.
Yeah.
And there's also the question about, is that really reparations if they're telling you how you're supposed to use the money, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Trevor Noah even spoke to Evanston reparations.
Yeah.
From the Daily Show. He was like, they're grown people, let them decide what they want to do with the money. Why are you telling them what they have to do with their reparations, with their repair? I was so happy he said that. I was so happy he said that. Like, yeah.
But Meleika, we're coming toward the end of our time, but we have a few moments. I had just one more prompt, and maybe there could be time for one more question. I have to admit, I'm just so struck by the wisdom and fortuitousness of how everything came together with the 2 bills you helped co-author, and how it's embedded in Illinois state law and policy now, which makes it clear cut. There's a commission to follow up. Not that it's going to be perfect, it's rollout, versus what's happening in Evanston with the reparations, and we're all glad for the start. It just feels like, gosh, this is Yeah, that this is not to reparations. This is not doing what it was intended to do, and just how much wisdom there is there. I remember Ibram Kendi's main point of this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, where he talks about, he really focuses on policy. He's like, we got to focus on changing policy, not people, or more policy than people. And I'm so struck by how your work with the education bill did just that. Because then it ends up changing people, of course, but if you don't get the policy there, there's no accountability.
Right. Yes. Thank you. I learned that joining We Will. I was like, this is where it happens, right here. And going to Springfield, and that was such an experience. And seeing where all these decisions are being made that impact our homes, our families, our lives. I said, this is where it's at. This is where everybody needs to be coming to Springfield.
And so what's your next bill?
We've got quite a few on the table. So we're having a board meeting Thursday. So we're just really coming back together to see what we're going to work on next. Yeah. We've got some things in motion. So I'll keep you all posted.
Well, we will be interested. I also think that this is another example of how one person can really make a huge difference in the world. We always think we're just little people. What can we do? We don't have that big a voice. But looking at you and all that you've accomplished and the courage you've had in moving forward with this, I mean, this is really amazing. So it's such a great pleasure for us to get to spend time with you tonight and hear about your work and your commitment to this work, not just what you've done, but going forward.
Thank you. And yes. Again, I knew nothing about how that process worked. And I just
learned how to work.
Right. I paid attention, and I said, I need to learn more, because yes, policy, it's all in policy. It's all, so I'm learning more and more about it. And I'm looking forward to, working on the next bills that, we have on the table that we're discussing. And I'll keep you all posted. And if there's anything ideas that you all have, please, let us know how We Will can help, how we can support. If you have a bill and you need us to go to Springfield with you, knock on those doors and chase those legislators down, let us know.
Yeah, I will.
Well, we're in your fan club now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Friends, we're out of time here. Let's give a hearty Zoom round of applause for Meleika. And we're so delighted for the time you spent with us, Meleika, and are inspired by the work you're doing and have done. And I'll put Meleika's contact information in the chat, just in case folks want to follow up with her. But I also forgot to mention in my intro that Meleika was named the 2021 Evanston Person of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce. He's very decorated and is being recognized, but we have high hopes and look forward to continuing to support you, Meleika, and all that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm here for you all. Whatever you all need, let me know. I'm here to support, most definitely. And any ideas, suggestions, we're open. I'm all ears. All ears. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.